right, I'm here. It says I'm live. And I am a few minutes late. Sorry about that. Just getting some notes together. And let's see. Welcome to another live stream of the Walter Bosley channel. And I am still trying to see where to look you guys in the eyes. I might not be able to. I'm still in Montana on a research and business trip. As many of you know, I am working on research for a couple of books and finding all sorts of stuff. It has been a great trip. And yes, thank you, Juan. I was just recorded an episode for the one-on-one podcast. There's Johnny Side. And I'll let you guys file into the room as I get my notes together, because I think you're going to find this to be a really interesting episode. This will commence kind of another series of reports that I'm jumping into. This will fall under the Black Sails moniker, and it will refer to U.S. Navy interest in arcane magic. Now, why have I decided to jump into this? Well, as you guys know, I've talked about T. Townsend Brown and the Cosmos Club and other strange arcane interests of the U.S. military throughout different books, throughout other reports, and while up here, I stumbled into some interesting information connected with this area in Glacier National Park, and it pretty much led to some of these same connections and the U.S. Navy. Now, I've just taken the dive into this new data, so what I'm going to discuss tonight is really along the lines of historical background, so that I can eventually lead into what the point of this this particular series, as I present reports on it, what this series will actually be presenting. And I'm sorry if I'm stumbling. I just got done with making a bunch of notes and doing searches and things like that. So I will be speaking off notes. So let me jump right into take care of the business. Malia and I will be returning to California next week, and let's see. It's been a really interesting trip. Went to see the Vortex over in Columbia Falls yesterday. You guys might have seen the couple of minutes we were there, but it was closed, so we didn't get to go inside. But we're going to go check out a couple of other spots. As you know, Glacier National Park is of keen interest to me in my research for a variety of reasons. I am working on the second volume of the Esoteric Napoleon research, and that has indeed been a part of why I've been here in Montana. And also, as you know, Glacier National Park is an important nodal point in Sechere's work in the Handprint of Atlas. And of course, as you guys know, I was in a TV series, The National Park Mysteries. It was filmed in 2013. The episode did not air until 2015, and it was right here in Glacier National Park. That was the first time I visited here. So there we have it. For those who didn't know, I was in Montana right now and didn't know what my interest here was or is. there you go. Oh, and again, I apologize for a slow start. I've had my head in the books and online doing research. Well, let's go into this. What's interesting is there is a potential U.S. Navy connection to Glacier National Park, a potentially nefarious connection. And I'm hoping that this research will ultimately lead to um, some type of explanation for what I've appeared to stumble into. So we're going to start tonight with a little bit of the hodgepodge of history that links all of this to here. Let's start with Glacier National Park because that's where I'm at right now. Okay. Now, interesting things associated with Glacier National Park. We have a missile launch facility used as a Nazi base during the Cold War. This is one of the rumors. This is one of the popular pieces of lore connected with Glacier National Park. Now, a missile launch facility would usually be relative to the Army, and in particular the Air Force. Montana is a major Air Force state. You have Malmstrom Air Force Base here. You had missile silos, still do, I'm sure, all over the central part of the state. Now, the publicly available maps that I researched don't show any missile silos this far west, this far northwest in Montana. However, being a United States Air Force officer, reserve, inactive, I think there's probably silos that the makers of the public maps aren't aware of. And there could very well be silos here in this area. Why would that be important? Well, a silo is an underground facility. And once you get into the subject of underground facilities, well, anything, could go from there as far as what those facilities actually are. Are they just missile silos? Are there other underground facilities in Montana? Many people say that there are, but that's the rumor of the missile launch facility that became used as a Nazi base. Now, was this a post-war Nazi international? That's my understanding of the gist of the rumor, the popular rumor, because this was during the Cold War, so it would have to be after World War II. But there you have it. That's the popular rumor and the actual inspiration for the episode of the TV show that I mentioned. Joseph Farrell was interviewed in that too. Look up National Park Mysteries on the Travel Channel, and it was the episode, the first episode that aired. I think the show only did one season under that name, and it's the first episode. And anyway, this rumor of a Nazi base, this is what that episode was inspired by. This is what motivated the making of that episode. So, just so you know. The local area for years has had a reputation of neo-Nazi radical presence as well. So, now, Glacier National Park has its share of UFO reports, also a topic discussed in the Travel Channel episode that I and Joseph Farrell were a part of. Canada, as you know, those of you who follow the history of UFO stuff, and believe me, there was a history of ufology and UFO occurrences prior to the New York Times articles of 2017. My gosh, many of you might not realize that there have been UFO reports for, my gosh, a decade. I am being facetious. because we can all laugh now at the so-called game-changing revelations of 2017, can't we? Interesting, though, that those had to do with the U.S. Navy, and what I'm talking about tonight is the U.S. Navy. So, anyway, going back to that, um, uh, secret saucer technology has long been associated with Canada. Okay, and why does this matter here? Well, because Montana borders Canada, and very specifically, Glacier National Park shares the U.S. Canadian border. I should say Canada and the U.S. share Glacier National Park. Up on the Canadian side, it's called Waterton. Over here, it's Glacier National Park. But the park straddles uh, both sides of the border. Now, um, the Air Force and via Project Blue Book and other agencies report that there have been for years, dating back decades, both military and civilian UFO reports. So that is what goes into supporting the rumor of saucer technology installations up in Canada. That contributes to that a lot. It has been by no means only here around Glacier National Park. This is a rumor, and there have been these reports in many other places in Canada. So one of the rumors associated with Nazi association, that was redundant of me, wasn't it? Was the rumor that Hitler was brought to Glacier National Park. Most specifically, he was hidden out for a time at the Lake McDonald Lodge. And he was escorted by none other than Otto Skorzeny. Now, for those of you who don't know, Otto Skorzeny was the premier special ops guru of Nazi Germany. Okay? And this rumor that Hitler uh, stayed at the Lake McDonald Lodge includes him being escorted by Otto Skorzeny. Now, this is very interesting, folks. This is yet more Nazi lore associated with this location. Now, another interesting association that might bear some reflection on what we're talking about tonight is that David Paulides, of course, documents several missing 411 cases in Glacier National Park. So think about that little piece of data in Paulides' work about that that demonstrates oddly that many of the missing are German. They have German names, or they are, German tourists that came over here. And some people think that's something to make something out of. So, there's yet another German connection to this whole big picture, but there are missing 411 cases dating back to the 1920s, pre-World War II, pre-Nazi Germany. And of course, as I mentioned before, Seshari, our friend and associate, has identified a major telluric current nodal point specifically on Mount Chalet, which is essentially Malia. That's just north of the north end of Lake McDonald, correct? Or is it farther out?
Mount Chalet is about in the center of the park.
Center of the park. Okay.
And at the more southerly eastern side.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's where the nodal point is on Mount Chalet. That's where Seshari's geomorphology describes it. Now, why is this important? Well, you guys have heard me talk about how the nodal points. These are intersections of telluric current, and there are several. I can't remember the number of lines. I didn't bring his map with me, but it's like a wheel. It's like a spoked wheel. There's so many intersecting there. And if we are going to go with the hypothesis that nodal points open up portals into which people may pass and disappear into other dimensions, it makes the David Paulides missing 411 cases all the more interesting. Also, the the, the claim by Sechery that there is this nodal point, and I'm convinced, I agree with him. Um, this can also play into this area being a good spot for UFO development, or sorry, UFO, for flying saucer type of technology development, because you would want to take advantage. Think, Victor Schauberger, think T. Townsend Brown. And while you're thinking about that, I'm going to think about hiding the messages because they're popping up over my face and it's distracting. You guys know that I'll get around to asking you questions or answering your questions. Gosh, guys, I'm really like sorry about it. I feel like I'm you know just kind of half here. I apologize for that. Not half here, but just stumbling over my own words. And I've been working on this for a while, so it's not like I it just it's there's so much I found that it's very interesting. So this is what we're dealing with Glacier National Park. The rumors that Nazi agents were here and that Hitler was transited through here by none other than Otto Skorzeny, that post-war Nazis have a secret installation in this area, and that there have been UFO reports, legitimately reported UFO reports by both civilian and military witnesses. Okay. Um, is there anything to this? And what would be the U.S. Navy connection to it? Well, the Office of Naval Research, as we know, is legendary, and their involvement in advanced technology dates back to the 19th century, and they are very often at the heart of the modern UFO mystery discussion. Okay, they're often at the heart of the discussion of advanced propulsion technologies. Most of us here are familiar with T. Townsend Brown and his well known Navy career connections and what he is believed and rumored and known to have been working on. He may have been the scientist who made the so called anti gravity breakthrough in 1954 that got a lid clamped down on the public discussion of such technology. For an excellent series of reports on T. Townsend Brown and what I'm talking about, check out Dark Journalist, because he has done some fantastic presentations on Brown and what I'm talking about. So, but what is the Montana connection, if any, to the United States Navy? Well, let's start with let me see here. Actually, I was going to start with one thing. I think I'll start with another. No, I'll go ahead and start with the first thing. Let's start with Montana Tech. Okay, the Montana Technical University. Now, an NBC report on the 2nd of November, 2022, states that a cooperative research and development agreement was established between the United States Navy and Montana Tech. And what's interesting is it gives Montana Tech students access to advanced Navy experiments. And the Navy will also mentor select students at Montana Tech. Okay. Now, this was reported by NBC and also by U.S. Senator John Tester of Montana on his website. Now, what's interesting about that is, oh, by the way, the Montana Tech University agreement that I refer to is also linked to Keyport, at the Naval Underwater Warfare Center, which has a link to Bremerton. Also, this is over in Washington. That's Washington State, correct, Malia?
Yeah, Bremerton is Washington
Yeah.
State, right next to the submarine base in Silverdale.
Silverdale. Okay. So here's what's interesting. Montana Tech University is located in Butte, Montana. Now, Butte, Montana has some really interesting things going on as far as the paranormal stuff in the mines. There's some interesting stuff that you can stream on TV about that. But Montana Tech University, as it's known in these reports, was founded in 1900. It goes back over 100 years. And, excuse me, it was originally known as the Montana State School of Mines, like mining, okay? Um, Now, isn't that interesting, particularly when the idea of underground installations is already in this discussion of might there be U.S. Navy association here, right? Um, Now, the Montana State School of Mines became affiliated with the University of Montana in 1994. And that's when they, I believe that's when they changed the name to the Montana Technical University. And what's interesting is it's part of a program that they have of a special, well, of special focus 4-year universities. So, Montana Tech University, formerly the Montana State School of Mines, okay, is considered a special focus 4-year university. Now, what is its special focus? Well, engineering, applied, and health sciences. Now, down the road in this series, this Black Sails series that I'm talking about, the fact that health sciences is one of the specialties that will present more significance. But that's down the road. That's not this episode. So it's a the kind of technical school. I mean, engineering. Boy, that's general enough, right? What kind of engineering? What kind of applied science? What kind of health science? I'll give you a clue, Bird. Health science could include things like psychiatry and psychology. And golly, when you're talking about the Department of Defense and you're talking about psychiatry and psychology, and hey, let's throw another log on the fire. We're this close to Canada. Think McGill University, which is farther east here. But when you think of McGill and you think of the U.S. Department of Defense and you think of psychiatry, yes, you're right. You think of MK Ultra, which itself uh, came out of Nazi German psychiatry. Okay, so you see how you're getting a feel for where I'm going with this. Now, here's what's interesting: the Montana School of Mines, dating back to 1900, and of course MTU now. It was always part of the V12. It was a V12 program participant. Okay, what is the V12 program? That was the U.S. Navy's um, basically officer advanced education program. Okay, so if they, for example, if you have an officer candidate or even one of your officers who shows an aptitude for special sciences and technology and those spooky science things, um, they would be put into the V12 program, right? Sent off to get an advanced degree. And this Montana School of Mines, uh, now known as Montana Technical University, MTU we'll call it here. This was always part of that, dating back. The V12 program dates back to 1942, so it's a wartime thing. And so the Navy has an interest in Montana through this education program, more specifically through its technical university, okay, which, um, with a name like the State School of Mines, you know, suggests some pretty interesting things. Um, Now, the history of mining in Glacier National Park, okay? This goes back to, for one example, the 1880s with a woman named Elizabeth Collins, who eventually became the cattle queen of Montana. Elizabeth Collins, she started a mining interest, started actually digging an actual mine north of Lake McDonald.
If that's ever a Dark Shadow's name.
Yeah, right? A Dark Shadow's name there. In fact, it is. Elizabeth Stoddard Collins is, the matriarch of the house. Well, here's what's interesting. North of Lake McDonald. Well, Lake McDonald is associated with, Hitler surviving World War II stuff. Isn't that interesting? That could infer or suggest a Nazi association to Glacier National Park, could it not? Isn't this interesting? Now, and lo and behold, we find out that there's mining facilities and operations and tunnels and such in that area. And we already have a claim, unsubstantiated to our satisfaction. However, it's out there that, a former missile launch facility was used as a Nazi base during the Cold War. Whether it was our Nazis or Nazi international Nazis, the source I took that from doesn't specify. But isn't that interesting? So that tells you that dating back to the 1880s, with the mining facilities, there's already kind of pre-established underground facility activity going on. Now, it would be real easy for the then War Department of the United States, subsequently the Department of Defense, to kind of take over one of those old mines and fix it up and refurbish it and perhaps turn it into an underground facility. And if we are to believe, and I think that we can certainly seriously entertain the idea that Joseph Farrell's basic premise for a Nazi international, is reasonable and could be true, then certainly any of them could have taken over an underground mining facility. So, what we're establishing here is, a precedent for, the possible source of the rumors, right? Now, interesting, this next connection to Montana. And this is where this and some data I just stumbled into, which I'm not going to talk about tonight. Sorry. I'm still developing it. But this little tidbit I am going to share with you is one of the main reasons why I'm kicking off this discussion, is the U.S. Navy interested in arcane magic. Because we find that one gentleman named L. Ron Hubbard, who was born in Nebraska, actually as an infant was moved right here where I'm sitting, Kalispell, Montana. Interesting. So L. Ron Hubbard spent part of his youth here in Kalispell, and then the family moved to Helena, but you get the point. Hubbard was here in Montana. I'm going to continue about Hubbard here momentarily. Now, L. Ron Hubbard's father, of course, you may or may not know this, was a U.S. Navy officer. Ooh. He was in the Navy, I think, before World War I, and then signed up during World War I. But Hubbard's dad was a Navy guy. Now, the source wasn't specific, but it did say that Hubbard's father was assigned to Guam by the time World War II started. If I've got that right, and I think I have. Sorry, my note, there's scribbles on here. I apologize for that. Now, Ron, interestingly enough, you heard me mention Bremerton. There was a time when the family, because of his father, was over in Washington State, and they lived in Bremerton. L. Ron Hubbard started high school in Bremerton, the Navy town, associated with this, more, secretive, sensitive Navy technology, the submarine bases and things like that. But he returned to Montana, to Helena, Montana, for high school. And that brings Jack Parsons into this whole mystery that I am talking about. Let's jump over to Jack Parsons. Yeah, you guys, look, I'm telling you, I literally just stumbled into some data, okay, that is stunning, but I'm still developing it, and it's not ready for proper presentation until it is developed further. But it is definitely a doozy. It's a whopper, and I think it's worth talking about the background that will, down the road, I don't know how long it's going to take me to get this prepared, if it, for presentation, but the whole milieu which it falls in is worth talking about already. So bear with me. You're watching a new investigation kick off, and in progress is the best way I can put it. With L. Ron Hubbard, as you know, we bring in Jack Parsons. Now, let me get to, okay, here we go. L. Ron Hubbard was very infamously connected to Parsons' Babylon Working, which was done in the Mojave Desert in February of 1946. See if I got that right. I did write that down. Let me see if I got that right. Babylon Working, February 1946. Okay. Now, Hubbard shows up in Pasadena. That's how they meet. They're kind of two like minds, but Jack Parsons, who had kind of a colorful life, as you know, he became involved in a sexual relationship with his then wife's sister, younger sister, and she kind of replaced her sister as Parsons' mate. And this was Parsons' wife was Helen, and her sister was Sarah. Sarah is the one who was with Jack when Hubbard shows up. Hubbard gets involved in a relationship with Sarah, and with this kind of with Parsons, if not his blessing, his open acknowledgement. This whole situation will turn sour eventually. But to get to the Babylon Working, and I'm reading from the Wikipedia bio, which, by the way, is from Strange Angel and other sources on, I think, what is it, Love and Rockets? Magic and or some Love and Rockets. It's a comic book, but anyway, you guys know. Many of you know the sources, and it says here the one ritual allegedly brought to. Oh boy, let me go back and start early because this is good stuff. Um, Jack Parsons and Sarah were in an open relationship encouraged by the OTO's polyandrous sect. This has to do with the topic, okay? That's why I'm going into this. Encouraged by the OTO's polyandrous sexual ethics, and she became enamored with Hubbard. Parsons, despite attempting to repress his passions, became intensely jealous. Motivated to find a new partner through occult means, Parson began to devote his energies to conducting black magic, and this caused great concern to the residents of um, his estate called the parsonage. And Crowley was contacted. Crowley thought that Parsons and Hubbard were, well, at least Parsons was not, were nuts, and he thought Hubbard was a con man from the get go. Imagine that. Crowley was a very shrewd judge of character. It sounds like. Parsons reported paranormal events in the house there in Pasadena resulting from the rituals, including poltergeist activity, sightings of orbs and ghostly apparitions, alchemical effect on the weather, and disembodied voices. Pendle, the author of, I think, Strange Angel, suggested that Parsons was particularly susceptible to these interpretations and attributed the voices to a prank by Hubbard and Sarah. So Pendle doesn't think that stuff was real. Um, it says here, continuing in the Wikipedia article, one ritual allegedly brought screaming banshees to the windows of the parsonage, an incident that disturbed, um, I guess, the source for the rest of his life. Wow, you guys know my weird experience of the whirlwind that was slamming against the window of the bedroom in which I had just had interesting, what I thought was just an old-fashioned sexual encounter, but was accompanied by several candles placed by my amour in interesting, odd spots around the room. And I, in my young naivete, you know, didn't know what was going on. So I've experienced the banshee slamming against the window thing. I don't know. I'm inclined not to dismiss old, Jack's claim there. Let me get back to where. In December 1945, Parsons began a series of rituals based on Enochian magic, during which he masturbated onto magical tablets. Accompanied, while he's doing this, he's accompanied by Sergei Prokofiev's second violin concerto. Oh shit, you can't make this stuff up. Describing this magical operation as the Babylon working, he hoped to bring about the incarnation of Thelamite goddess Babylon, Babalon, onto Earth. Now, Hubbard was allowed to participate as the scribe during this. Okay. Oh, and let's see. Parsons really thought that Hubbard was, as it says here, sensitive to detecting magical phenomena. Okay, I don't know. I think L. Ron Hubbard was particularly sensitive to detecting fools to, bullshit. But that's just me. Um, I like what Richard Metzger is quoted here. The author Richard Metzger, um, and I quote, he said, Parsons jerked off in the name of spiritual advancement while Hubbard scanned the astral plane for signs and visions. Okay, now, before we get to the ritual, remember, at this time, 1946, L. Ron Hubbard was still a United States naval officer. Okay? And remember, he started his career in naval intelligence. All the publicly available records pretty much depict Hubbard as a complete fuck up and, lazy jerk to such an excess that this former counterintelligence intelligence guy, part of me has to wonder if that was all true. Okay, I mean, seriously, when you read Hubbard's um, military performance records and the comments in those, you just can't believe that this this guy did this stuff and got away with it to the extent that he didn't lose his commission. It's really weird. Now, why do I even entertain the possibility that that was an exaggeration and that stuff might not have been true? Well, he started his career as an intelligence officer. So, for those of you new to what I do, um, and who aren't familiar with how the intelligence community works, it might be slim, but there is a possibility that that was all part of, a cover of him being an incompetent boob. Okay, you have to take that into a little bit of consideration. And why would this matter in this instance? Well, because Jack Parsons was very much deeply involved in the military industrial complex, and he was a genius with rocket science, and that was very, very, did I say very important at the end of World War II going into the Cold War. Okay, so um, the FBI and the Army and others were already concerned about Jack Parsons' lifestyle and the people he was associating with, not to mention his little brief dance with Marxism and such before all this when he was younger. So it's not unreasonable to entertain the idea that naval intelligence would have been sent in on behalf of the concerns of the ONR, Office of Naval Research, um, to just get a closer look at Parsons and see what the hell's going on. So there is a look, I emphasize the word slim here, but it's there. There is a slim chance that you must consider that Hubbard was given this assignment. Go send Hubbard over to check out this weirdo Parsons. Hubbard's a weirdo himself, so they'll get along, right? And he'll gain his trust. See, think about it. Think about the crap that Hubbard was into. Think about the stuff that's not crap that is arcane and occult that Hubbard was also into. And look, I know for a fact from personal experience, when you want to get close to somebody, send somebody who will gain the trust of that target. Well, if you've got an agent who is well versed in the same weird arcane stuff that your target's versed in, is an expert in, that's the agent that you send. Okay, it's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer. So while Parsons is jerking off in the name of spiritual advancement, to quote Metzger, Hubbard's, scanning the astral plane for signs and wonders. Um, it says here, their final ritual took place in the Mojave Desert. That's where I live, folks, the Mojave Desert, in late February 1946, during which Parsons abruptly decided that his undertaking was complete. Now, here's where it gets interesting, folks, and many of you already know where this is going. Parsons was attempting to generate, create, bring into existence. Let me make sure I get this right. An elemental manifestation of what he called Babylon, Babalon. And shortly after, let's see if we got specifics here. Okay. Upon returning from the Mojave Desert after having done this ritual, he returns to Pasadena to find that one Marjorie Cameron, yes, many of you know the legendary Marjorie Cameron, had arrived at the Pasadena estate of Jack Parsons. And here's what's interesting. Marjorie Cameron, let's see how recent it was. She was an illustrator unemployed, but she was also recently released from the United States Navy. You're beginning to see why I'm pulling this thread? We got L. Ron Hubbard, who shows up at the door of Parsons' estate, essentially. U.S. Navy officer. He doesn't get out of the Navy till 1950, by the way. And then you have this mystery woman, Marjorie Cameron, who also was, until right before arriving in Pasadena, shortly before that, in the U.S. Navy. Parsons, the two people, the second one has arrived, of the two people who have become closest to him during all this strange period, U.S. Navy personnel. Okay? You think that was an accident? Do you? I don't. I really don't. Now, I know it was right after World War II, and there was a lot of people in the service, blah, 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 so forth, so forth. I still don't think that was an accident. Okay? Now, I don't know if Hubbard and Cameron were acquainted via the Navy. I don't know. I've not looked closely at that. But here's an interesting thing. This will come into play more down the road in this series. But let me describe Marjorie Cameron to you for those who don't know. She was a very, very fair skinned, lady with red hair and blue eyes. And her appearance had such, and her appearance, both her physical appearance and her arrival, the timing of her arrival had a huge impact on Jack Parsons. He believed her to have arrived there and walked into his life as a result of the Babylon working. Okay? He believed that he had conjured her presence through, you know, essentially playing come on the cookie out in the desert. Anyway, I don't know any other way to put it. Um, so Parsons and Cameron really hit it off, you might say. And she agrees to start being his Scarlet Woman, so to speak, as Crowley used to have Scarlet Women. Um, she became his Scarlet Woman in several sex magic rituals. Okay. And they eventually, let me see when. Trying to think now. Here's what's interesting. Cameron claimed to, as it says here, know nothing at first of Parsons' magical intentions. She said, I didn't know anything about the OTO, the Ordo Templi Orientis. I didn't know that they had invoked me. I didn't know anything, but the whole house knew it. Everybody was watching to see what was going on. Despite this ignorance and her skepticism about Parsons' magic, Cameron reported her sighting of a UFO to Parsons, who secretly recorded the sighting as a materialization of Babylon. Now here's an Empire of the Wheel kind of little side connection. Parsons was greatly inspired by Crowley's book Moonchild. If you recall in Empire of the Wheel 1, Rick Spence and I point out that Moonchild was written within 18 months after Crowley had passed through San Bernardino. Now, when Crowley passed through San Bernardino, that was the autumn, the fall, as we also say, of 1915. And if you recall, in San Bernardino in the fall of 1915 is when the Cora Stanton mystery and the other 6 deaths in that mystery occurred. I might also point out to you that Cora Stanton was a fair-skinned white woman with identified as having red hair and blue or gray eyes. Marjorie Cameron, a white woman with red hair and blue eyes. And, well, down the road, there will be more to discuss on that. So, I suspect that Crowley's Moonchild was just as inspired by what he learned about what was going on in San Bernardino in 1915 as the other known sources of what inspired the story. I think it was a blend, but I do think that what happened in San Bernardino in 1915, which Rick Spence and I call the San Bernardino working, um, which is all laid out in the book Empire of the Wheel. I do think what happened there is reflected in Crowley's Moonchild, even though he didn't get it published until years later. You look at the history of it, he wrote it during those first 18 months after passing through San Bernardino in the mystery season. So, now, here's where weird arcane science comes in to this. We have Metzger. Let's quote Metzger again. The purpose of the Babylon working was a daring attempt to shatter the boundaries of space and time, facilitating, according to Parsons, the emergence of Thelema's Aeon of Horus. Shattering the boundaries of space and time. Essentially, you could argue, or you could infer, whatever, you could entertain the possibility, was Parsons, through sex magic with Marjorie Cameron, attempting to do something similar that the Hadrian Collider is rumored to be doing at CERN, shattering the boundaries of space and time. This was one of the United States military industrial complex's rocketry geniuses. Okay, for those few of you who might actually not know who Jack Parsons was, think about that. Okay. Um, let's see. Oh, by the way, Kenneth Grant, look him up. Um, he once, and I believe Parsons said something like this to the FBI. I'd have to go back and look at the Pendle book and the other books, sources on it. But Kenneth Grant certainly believed that what Parsons and Hubbard did in the Babylon working opened a rift in time and space, shattering the bounds of space and time, as Metzger quote said. But Kenneth Grant believed that the Babylon working, what Parsons and Hubbard did during that, is what eventually led to Roswell and the UFO wave, introduced, credited anyway, to Kenneth Arnold. Now remember, Kenneth Arnold, as it turns out, had associations to the ritual magic world. So what's going on there? Anyway, there we have, through Hubbard and Marjorie Cameron. By the way, check out Marjorie Cameron in the 60s, early 60s, mid 60s horror film Night Tide. She has a small role in that. It's a Dennis Hopper horror film, by the way, about a mermaid character. And it's good cheese. I've had a copy of it for years. And Marjorie Cameron, there she is, right there. So there we have, through Cameron and Hubbard, a Navy connection, and I argue a Navy interest in what Parsons was doing with this sex magic and this idea of, why would they have been interested in it? Could it very well have been beyond just they were worried what this guy working on their secret projects was involved in and who might find out about it? You know what? As I'm a former counterintelligence agent, I can tell you that you would not have had to put an agent undercover participating in the rituals just to determine if the mage, the sorcerer, was sharing your technical secrets with unauthorized personnel. Okay? It looks very much to me like more so, or just as much in the case, the case of Cameron as at Hubbard, it suggests to me the very legitimate consideration that the U.S. Navy was specifically interested in these rituals and in the claims about these rituals. Okay? Um, Now, when you go back and look at World War II, what the Nazis are alleged to, the weird science, right, that the Nazis were alleged to be investigating. And when you look at the well known occultists who were part and parcel of the high ranking Nazi structure, okay, and we got a bunch of these Nazis, okay, through Operation Paperclip. We got MK Ultra through Operation Paperclip from Nazi psychiatrists. It looks to me and others out there, you guys know this, that that was when the U.S. military interest in truly arcane and occult science really began, was during this, towards the end of World War II, when we got these Nazi scientists, these Nazi Germany scientists. Okay, so this really shouldn't surprise us, the possibility that the U.S. Navy or someone in the U.S. Navy would be interested in this stuff. Okay, now the first suspects of the U.S. Navy that I would argue would be the psychiatrists, right? The very same guys that would have been interested in what the CIA would subsequently present through MK Ultra, right? Um, but I have no doubt that there were some Van Helsing and Frankensteinian mad scientists in the War Department, um, the then soon to become the Department of Defense, who were pursuing weird science. I mean, there had been weird science pursued in the United States before World War II. I mean, Tesla was here for how many decades, right? And don't forget, Tesla's reputation for the possibilities of other dimensional realities, right? And who was it that was there first, getting into his safe when Tesla died? Agents of the United States Navy, the Office of Naval Research, the Office of Naval Intelligence. Okay, they wanted what was in Tesla's safe. Okay, so the possibility that the Office of Naval Intelligence, on behest of the Office of Naval Research, um, putting a couple of agents on Jack Parsons with the instruction to get involved with his sex magic rituals, his arcane occultic stuff, that, to me, that's not beyond the pale to consider. Okay? So, now, to bring it back to Montana, where I'm at right now, in Glacier National Park, um, I've just laid out, you've got the Navy links to Jack Parsons. You got Jack Parsons' activity in this arcane weird science that involves other dimensions. You've got, the U.S. Navy and its active presence here in Montana through, which I've already identified, the Montana Technical University, okay? Which gives a vague description of engineering, applied, and health sciences. And I already broke that down for you, how the weird stuff could easily fall in to. My question is, what's going on at Montana Tech University under classified research for the Navy? Okay. Might MTU, for years now in their association with Naval Education Program, might MTU be involved with some type of ultra secret, ultra classified, Navy connected, sponsored experimentation here at Glacier National Park and in Kalispell and Whitefish and Columbia Falls, this area. Okay? You have to ask yourself that. I do. I wonder what's going on, with that. But then you throw in, the rumors that have been going around for years that, the Lake McDonald Lodge right here on. Oh, by the way, you get to Lake McDonald Lodge by following the Going to the Sun Road. Let me throw another little nice tidbit to you. Those of you who know your Kubrick, right? In The Shining, will remember that the opening title credit sequence shows the car, Jack Torrance and Wendy and little Danny boy, heading up to the Overlook Hotel, and that's filmed on Going to the Sun Road right here in Glacier National Park. The movie's supposed to take place in Colorado, but Kubrick specifically had that shot on Going to the Sun Road. And think of the identified, Nazi association symbology that's been identified by analysts of that film. Check out Rob Egger on YouTube, okay, and he points this stuff out. There are Nazi thematic synchronicities in The Shining, and it's interesting that Going to the Sun Road follows Lake McDonald all the way up, okay, and we have this rumor that Adolf Hitler was hidden out at the Lake McDonald Lodge with Otto Skorzeny. Do you think Kubrick was aware of that rumor? Who knows? But it makes this, all the more interesting. So, then you throw in the missing 411 cases and Sechery's identification of the node, okay, of the intersection of several telluric current energy lines, right here in Glacier National Park, specifically on Mount Chalet. Okay. Might the mad scientists of the U.S. Navy and or greater Department of Defense by extension, might they be well aware of that nodal point and taking advantage of what they might harvest at that nodal point or through that nodal point? We know that telluric currents are very real. Okay, we know that they're pretty much the energy that likely feeds the world grid of Nikola Tesla's ideas. And here in Montana, we have U.S. Air Force and U.S. Navy connections. Now, the Air Force connections here are more overt because we have an Air Force base here. We had missile silos here, right, during the Cold War. Who knows what else the Air Force... Here's the thing. I'll tell you, since the 1950s, okay, if you see the fingerprints of the U.S. Navy here, you can bet that the Air Force is here too, in capacities that you don't already know. Yeah, we know they're here because of the Air Force Base. We know they're here because of the Cold War era silos. But I'm talking about the arcane technology, the arcane magic. If we have reason to suspect by what we can find readily of a Navy presence here, particularly a Navy presence with a university dedicated, special focus dedicated to engineering and applied science and health science. I mean, come on, how vague do you want to get? I'm telling you, MK Ultra and anything like it would fall under a health sciences program. Okay, it could easily fall under that. Messing with portals into other dimensions. Well, there's your engineering focus, right? and how you use developed technologies in a practical fashion. Well, there's your applied science, right? I'm going to be looking a lot closer at Montana Technical University because it does bear closer inspection. Think also, if you want, of again what Daniel List, dark journalist, has been reporting about the what's going on with Livingston and why it's important. Again, what's going on here in Montana. So there is basically the weirdness that I have found so far within this context of U.S. Navy presence here in Montana, DOD presence in things that they would be interested in, um, and L. Ron Hubbard connection to Montana. Why would that be important in this? Um, Well, I have some more literature written by and about Hubbard and about his youth and his life that I'm going to dive into when I get home, because he spent a fair portion of his youth here. I want to know the extent of his interest in Glacier National Park, uh, for better or worse, like him or not, even if he was a big con man dirtbag. Um, the man was keenly interested in these weird things, and you know if you had to pick a group of people that would at least be aware and interested in things like vortexes and things like nodal points as identified by Sechery, Hubbard would be in that would be on that list of people. So what did Hubbard know about Glacier National Park and its mysteries and the nodal point as identified by Sechery? Um, you know, what about the disappearances that dating back to the 1920s that David Paulides has reported in his Missing 411 book, from the disappearances from Glacier National Park? Um, it's a whole bunch of stuff that bears looking into further. As I said, the impetus for me doing this, I'm not prepared to share that yet, but when I am, believe me, you'll, I think you'll understand why I'm kicking off this discussion, and we'll be returning to it. Let me see. My God, 67 minutes of me stammering around and just kind of stumbling a little bit. This is what it's like, folks, when I walk through the threshold of another potential mystery. Um, it's there are pieces out there that connect, but you haven't found the connecting threads yet. You've got to, but it's still worth thinking out loud, so to speak. So, uh, wow, almost 70 minutes into this, I'm going to go ahead and show the chat here and take your questions and comments. So remember, please put them in all caps, or I will assume that you're just having a conversation. So,
You want some help?
I can always use your help. So you help me stay sane with all this stuff. Anyway, I want to thank all you guys for being here. We got a pretty good sized crowd today. And remember, on Friday nights, I have a radio show at the Independent Broadcast Network. That's Friday nights from 6 to 9 p.m. PST. And Malia has hers tonight at the same Independent Broadcast Network tonight from 6 to 9, right? Or 9 to midnight.
Well, Mountain Standard Time, 10 to 1.
Yeah, Mountain Standard Time, 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. Okay, and she'll be on. And of course,
Genocide says,
yeah.
just FYI, he lives in Bremerton.
Oh, really? Right now?
Mhm.
Oh, Johnny Side. Maybe you'll be a field agent for this series. So you're welcome, Susan. Um, yeah, and
Oh, we had some snarks. We slapped around me and Genocide a little bit.
really, what
Yeah.
were they saying? What? Tell me about the snarks.
Orfeo. Do you remember Orfeo?
Yes.
And Dr. Ragnarok, I think, or something weird. I can't remember. Yeah, Dr. Ragnarok, which I think is Orfeo, but I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
Jerry Cthulhu asks, "Can you talk about the significance of all the occult things that happened in 1947 and that may have shaped the future, please?" That's kind of a little too general. I do not have thought for a long time that Roswell had anything to do with an extraterrestrial event. I'll say that. I do lean more towards something arcane or secret technology that, you know, that they're still not prepared to talk about. Rogue status. Sounds like you're onto something. Keep
Oh,
yeah, it's true,
no.
Rogue.
Shelley didn't caps, but that's okay. She probably didn't know.
Okay.
And she mentioned this earlier in the chat too. Well, not this exactly, but she mentioned something like this. So she says Battlestar Galactica from 1978
Yeah.
had a lead actor from Helena, a German dude. His name was Dirk Benedict.
Wait, Dirk Benedict is from Helena?
Aye.
He was on the A Team too, but I never watched the A Team, but I certainly remember him as Starbuck on
She
Battlestar Galactica.
season 2, episode 2 of Star Trek.
Yeah.
Phil, Montana was the site of first contact.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
The Navy base had a base at Lake Pend, Oriel megalithic, nearby in
How
Idaho.
come that's not showing up?
Oh, it's way up at the top.
Oh shoot. Okay. Okay. Yeah, folks, I'm just now got to looking at things. Rogue status says sex magic. Yeah. Yeah, it can get weird. I once attended a
Jerry Cthulhu says, I have a friend who's good friends with Dirk Benedict.
I'll keep that in mind, Jerry. That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, I once attended. I was an agent in Ohio. I was stationed at Wright Pat, and I attended a branch of the an OTO meeting ritual, and it was. I attended. I was in his robe's helmet with ram's horns on it, and was doing all his hokey pokey and blah 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 blah. And his wife was the Scarlet Woman, and she was on the altar. Um, Naked except for this see-through looked like a curtain thing, and the observers were all invited to take part in the communion that they did, and I probably foolishly I did. You walked up to the altar and you said the little thing, and then the naked lady giggles and flirts with you, and then puts this wafer in your mouth, and I hope it wasn't like a Jack Parsons wafer where it looked like honey. It didn't look like any it didn't look like semen or anything, but good God, you never know. But anyway, those some of the adventures I did when I was
We're
a federal
buffering.
agent.
It's buffering really bad. It could be our internet signal.
Okay, so no one's seen me say this?
Yeah, because it just,
God
right
damn
after
it.
you said auto, it started buffering really bad. You could be getting, you could be getting infiltrated, but it could be just time of day. 'Cause
Freckle
it's 5G
Joy,
going
Freckle
on.
Joy offers some very astute advice. She says, "Find Hecate in Glacier National Park, and you will." I, I agree with you. Oh, okay. I ended a TO ritual. I was an agent at the time to Wright Patterson, and I had an OTO ritual, and as an observer, and there was the guy with his ram's horn helmet, haboo baboo baboo, doing all this ritualistic stuff, and his wife was the Scarlet Woman. She was naked except for this see-through thing, And we were all us observers. There were about 7 or 8 of us were invited to participate in the communion, and I did because I was an adventurer. And I said, that joy. Thank you. I mentioned eating the wafer that they gave me, that and you know, I hope there wasn't semen on it. And Freckle Joy says, "Oh, there was. Oh, great, nice. Cakes of light," says Scott Henry. We can hear. Oh, okay, all right, heard it. It's the CIA. They were throttling me. Yeah. NSA. Dang DARPA. Let's see. I would have liked to hear that about. I would like to hear that about Glacier National Park. Louder, please. Hey, I'm on my phone.
No.
Turn your volume up, because I listen to these things
I
when
don't.
I'm
It's
done,
cha-cha-cha-cha-cha.
and and with all due respect,
Anyways.
they sound fine. But there's always, when people say they can't hear it, I politely say, turn your volume up, and you can hear better. Um, so, yeah, thank you, Megalith. Yeah, I'm up here in Kalispell, Montana. Um, but it just kind of blew me away that Hubbard lived here, right after he was born. So it buffered. Oh, location in Glacier, which I talked about Lake McDonald. I talked about the nodal point of telluric current intersection at on Mount Chalet. Johnny Side says, off topic, have you seen the trailer for it? Yeah, I have. I'll talk about that another time. But
Well, you know what? Tell him about the radio show and how much you talked about that on the radio.
yeah, if you go to my radio show called Lost Horizons with Walter Bosley at the Independent Broadcast Network, um, you know, it's live Friday nights from 6 to 9 p.m. Pacific time, but it's archived. You can go there and listen. I talk a lot about True Detective. So you're welcome, Wendy. Um, yeah. So, yes, I did see the trailer. There is an exciting little Easter egg in there, as you know, if you've seen it and you're a fan of season one. But Malia found a very recent article dated yesterday, which apparently confirms that Matthew McConaughey will not be in season four, which doesn't mean Rust Cole won't be. But if it's not the Rust Cole as portrayed by McConaughey, I'm really, that's going to be disappointing. So if it might be a younger Rust played by another actor, but I'm still going to watch it.
Posting the link for your radio show for the peoples. Go find it.
So, I will be looking into whitefish, Joy.
Other than the train station.
I'm looking into Kalispell, whitefish, Columbia Falls, and Glacier National Park, and the yeah, it's getting more interesting. So, anyway, any more questions about tonight's topic? Okay, let's. I'll open it up to anything you want to ask relating to the other topics and stuff. Did Crowley go through Montana on his trip? Joy, I got to go back and look at the Empire of the Wheel data and the Secret Agent 666 by Rick Spence, but he might have gone through the Canadian side, the Waterton side of Glacier National Park back in 1915.
That maybe.
Because he was in Detroit and then at some point dipped up into Canada. And then it sounds right. In fact, I think I talk about that, Joy, in Empire of the Wheel. I think I do indeed talk about it. But he went there the northern route, exactly, through the Canadian side at Waterton. So I think we have some spam here.
I'm putting him in timeout. I just spanked him. You're welcome.
Yeah, because what that has to, if it has to do with what I'm talking about, state what it has to do, okay?
Got broke
Freckle
the
Joy, and was in Bremerton and Victoria. Right, exactly. Exactly. Interesting, the places that popped up in my follow-up on the thing that I stumbled into over the weekend. Um, and it made Marjorie Cameron's presence in all this all the more interesting. Spreaker. Oh yeah, thank you, Brian. You're right. You can find the archive shows at Spreaker. I forget about that. And it's different than this show, folks. It's different than the Walter Bosley channel. It's more R-rated. It's 3 hours. I talk about things that maybe some things things I don't talk about here or haven't talked about here. It's a different kind of show. It might not be everybody's cup of tea. My cup of tea lately has been spiced chai, but I digress. So,
along with mushroom elixirs.
Mushroom elixir. I asked Malia at the store the other day, this mushroom elixir, will I hallucinate? Will I throw up? And she looked at me like, it's not that kind of mushroom.
In the store.
Freckle Joy says Cameron was a very powerful witch and she took the Moonchild rituals very... Yes, she did. Yes, she did. Yes. She was an artist as well. And yes, I eat mushroom omelets.
That's what I asked you. Don't you eat mushrooms
And
on
mushrooms
your
on
salad?
salad. And yeah, That's okay, old gaffer. That's why it's recorded. As far as the research here for Esoteric Napoleon Volume 2, good stuff. Freckle Joy says it would be interesting to find her magic hideout in Beaumont by your house. Oh.
Right? That would be
Indeed. You know what's interesting is T. Townsend Brown lived there too, in Beaumont. Wendy Randall stayed in Whitefish and visited Glacier. She drove 2,200 miles one way. It was her least favorite national park in the... Darcy Edmonds, major Scientology, money, CIA connection, all this. Yeah. Miscavige is being even more strange than usual. Miscavige, that guy. Hello, Holly. How are you? April Chrisman, love your work. I'm blind. I use voice to text. Oh, well, thank you, April. I'm hoping to be offering audiobooks sometime in the near future.
Within the next 6 months to a year.
Yeah, so hang in there, and Freckle Joy. In fact, I just learned about him living out there through reading the T. Townsend Brown biography that our friend, I don't want to say his name, my Arizona friend, if you're listening, you know who you are. He's loaned me his book. My God, I've had it for almost a year. I apologize that I've had it that long, but I'm going to bring it back to him so that we have an excuse to go to Whataburger. Where'd the... Oh, there we go. If those who care for me allow me to have a Whataburger. Between Liliana and Malia, I have a good police force on my diet. So, and I heard Whataburger was bought by a corporation now. And they've got a bigger owner.
Not even for chili.
So, yeah.
Oh, one flying,
I
Brian.
I know you may have already answered this. Isn't sex magic some of the most powerful? Yeah. Just conception itself, right, is magical in a sense. Johnny said, can I now be the Bremerton friend? The Bremerton agent. Our man in Bremerton. And so, the next report, I will be reaching out and accepting field reports from our man in Bremerton. Inverted, it's destructive. Yes, yes, Darcy. Uh, it can be, anything can be dark and bad, right? If misused. Exactly. I admit I have a Frankensteinian curiosity about the arcane. That's why I participated in an OTO ritual communion and yuck. Uh, Flying Brian says In and Out Burger sex magic. Tommy's is sexier magic, in my opinion. Tommy's original.
All right, I'm banning Draco.
Yeah. Bye bye, Draco. You need to quit spamming with the same dumbass comment. And I'm not trying to be insulting, but stop with the spamming. You know? Boot him. In and Out, though. Well, In and Out's good. Tommy's is better. So, um, my personal life after participating in an OTO ritual in the late 90s, it's had its ups and downs, uh, but anyway, I do. I have this Frankenstein curiosity about things. This is why my transgender daughter is well aware that I use her as a lightning rod for the paranormal. Go stand over there and let's see if it attracts some screaming banshees or a cryptid winged thing. You know. Thinks Tommy's is great, but they are closing up. What? The one down by where you work that we go to? Oh man, that's because all these idiots are just obsessing on In and Out. The quest for the Great American Burger is a spiritual quest. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Um, but there was still something appealing to a side of my psyche about being, because the room in which they did this ritual, the walls, the ceiling, and the floor were all painted a uniform black, and they had their little accoutrements and props, and there was just something scintillating and fascinating about observing this. Um, it, and I admit that the MK Ultra thing, for example, and this arcane ritual magic stuff, it's kind of like Charlie Manson, right? Charlie Manson, was an arrogant, narcissistic asshole, but he is still so fascinating to just sit there and watch and listen to. Okay, and that's what this stuff is to me: the arcane, the occult. Um, it's still fascinating. As you guys know, I've gone out into cemeteries and attempted necromancy, um, and other things. Flame by Mars. Lots of folks like that guy. Five Guys, Shake Shack in India. Yep, yep, yep. Burgers, which I hear a wall burger. Yeah. I wonder, can food be sex or ritual magic? I suppose. Well, yeah, there's food magic, of course, right? Sex magic. There's one instance I know for sure that it was done on me, and that was with the candles and the thing, the whirlwind slamming at the window, because I was trembling uncontrollably, involuntarily, and it was just very, very weird. And the person I was with was just very calmly and silently observing. Um, I have been known to be attracted to witchy women. I had another, living girlfriend years after that practiced Wicca and other things. And, you know,
This is hilarious. YouTube keeps putting people's comments and hide the algorithm hiding them because we're talking about dicks and the restaurant In and Out.
yeah.
And so it's recognizing them as sexual comments.
Well, it probably
Finding
didn't
it.
hurt that I was talking
It's
about,
hilarious.
occultists, playing cum on the cookie.
Look how smart they are.
You know. So what are they doing? They're blocking me, or?
Oh no, just people who make comments.
Oh, okay.
They're like, it's
You know.
hilarious.
We're all adults here, folks, right?
Like that's how we got here.
But yeah, so my experience with, and I participated in one of my younger witch girlfriend's little things she did, which probably I shouldn't have, but it appeals to me, and I admit it appeals to me, especially when women are doing this magic and these rituals. There's something that on the superficial level, yeah, it heightens the sexuality, I think, but it's tapping into something deeper than that, if I may put it that way.
We're all adults here.
We're all adults here. I was tapping into something deeper in those explorations of
God.
arcane science. Woohoo! Anyway, good Lord, we've got a big crowd here tonight. But you got to hear what Bosley's talking about. Good Lord. What is the difference between good and evil magic, Flying Brian asks, and why are some people spelling it different? Oh, magic with a K is, I'll let someone else explain it to you, but it is a thing, Brian. Darcy Edmonds, well, at least you appreciate the sacred divine feminine. Indeed, I do. You might say I'm a sucker for expressions of that. To me, witchy women and the witchy side of women are the absence of that. I have to. Megalith, though, reminds us that tantric energy is something to play with. Oh no, you're right. You're right. It's at the same time that I'm fascinated. Bree Bavell, spiraling downward. I thought it was elevating. I thought the conversation was rather quite elevating. Oh, anyway, I'm not sure I can swallow that enormous point. Megalithic says magic with a K is a Crowley thing to differentiate it from stage magic. Exactly. Thank you. That's the way to put it. Magic with a K refers to serious magic. Now, there are knuckleheads out there, 99.9% of them males, who get in magic, whatever.
I would call that karma magic.
Yeah, karma, whatever. I mean, I've always figured that by the grace of God, they have no effect upon me, and they'll understand that specific statement. Yeah, Scott Henry has the same weakness, and I'm not making light of it. I'm not making a joke about it. Women with arcane knowledge fascinate me. It's maybe it's kind of the forbidden fruit because can't handle women like that, so they forbid them. Oh, those are evil women. They're naughty. Morality sub program. Holly Hernandez asks, if questions are open subject now, what are your thoughts on ayahuasca? I would be all for the experience of what you experience, Holly, but what turns me off is that you have to puke your guts out afterwards, and I'm just, that kind of is the turnoff for me. But if there are alternatives, now Flying Brian has told me about the DMT alternative that one can take a trip on, but I've never really done psychedelics or such before. Fragoso says, why do you think men have been taught that Eve led them astray? Yeah.
We probably ought to call it if we're buffering again.
Oh, okay. Well, folks, this has really been a fun Q&A session. But we're up to an hour and a half already, 95 minutes. Wow. This went by really fast. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. I better bring this to an end because we're buffering. God forbid we talk about the things we're talking about. But I will be back with another one of these. I'm calling it Black Sails. It's the U.S. Navy connection to dark arcane magic. And down the road, I'm eventually going to get to what kicked this series off, the thing that I have stumbled into very, very recently, just like the last few days. So, Brian says he's so close to taking a DMT business trip. Everyone I've ever spoken to about it says it's amazing. I'd be interested in the DMT. You do, Freckle Joy. That the ladies do.
Mhm.
Many of them. Johnny said, great show, Walter, Emilia. Thank you. We both thank you. Come back soon. Very interesting topic. Hey, and everybody come back next week. Remember, you can get the books at lulu.com, lulu.com. You can go to walterbosley.com at Lost Content Library.